Hi, Journeyers. I'm Tony Carnes, your host for A Journey Through NYC Religion Television. Let me ask you a question. At your religious services this last weekend, you were probably told something like, "Blessed are the peacemakers, be compassionate, and promote reconciliation." But how do you put Sunday principles into practice on Monday morning when you have a close deal, or you got to argue your viewpoint on a project, or you plot to beat the competition? Does goodwill end at the church, synagogue, or masjid doors? Today we have Seth Freeman, who is going to give us some tools to produce goodness in even our most conflictual interactions. He teaches negotiations at NYU Stern School of Business, as well as at the Columbia Business School. He has an approach to happiness through negotiations, which has been featured in articles in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Washington Post, Time Magazine, and others. Welcome to the program, Seth.
Oh, thank you so much, Tony. It's a real pleasure.
So how do we take what happens on Sunday morning and put it into practice on Monday?
Oh, what a great question. You know, I'm only interested in the answer 10 hours a day. I've just been passionate about this for so long. And I don't think that there's one single answer. In fact, that's kind of the focus of the whole book. But I would say if somebody really said, give me one thing that could help me be more effective today, that could make a difference, I would probably suggest the first tool in the book. And let me share with you a brief story that might illustrate how this can help. It certainly helped me go from being kind of a jerk in the situation to being something much closer to what I was praying I could be.
This is taken from your book, 15 Tools to Turn the Tide.
Exactly.
A step-by-step playbook for empowered negotiating.
Exactly.
Which we will link to on our website and also into Professor Freeman's own website.
Exactly. So there I was. It was a Sunday. It was a Wednesday afternoon, rainy, cold November day, just before the eve of Thanksgiving, and one of the worst moments to try to find a taxi. So I'm waiting there. I'm cold. I'm wet. And oh wait, there's one taxi. And the guy comes over, and I get in. He says, "Where to?" I say, "Midtown Manhattan." He goes, "No." And I go, "What do you mean no?" He goes, "I'm not going there." And I go, but you got to. It says right there on the back of your seat that you have to take me to any location in New York City. He goes, "I'm not going there. I don't care." And I said, "Well, I'm not getting out of the cab." He goes, "Well, I'm not moving."
Oh, gosh.
So great. I'm sitting there feeling silly, and he's sitting there, and a full minute goes by, which feels like 5 or 10 when you're in a situation like this, and we're both stewing. And finally I say to him, "Why won't you take me to Manhattan?" He goes, "Because rush hour is going to mean that I'm going to spend the next 2 hours going there and coming back. I'm about to go off duty, and I live out on Long Island in the other direction. I don't want to be stuck in traffic all afternoon and evening." I look out the window, and I notice that about 2 blocks away, there's another taxi, and it's got its light on. It's too far to run to in the rain. Someone could grab it, but it's available. And so I go, if you'll drive me over to that taxi over there, and he lets me in, he'll take me to Manhattan, I'll get out. And immediately the cab driver goes, "You got a deal." We drive over. "Hey, will you take this guy to Manhattan?" "Sure, get in." And I get out, and as I'm getting out, the cab driver says, "Hey man, thanks so much. I'm sorry I couldn't take you." And I said, "No problem at all. Have a great Thanksgiving." Now, what was it that allowed him and me to go from being really hostile to each other, like typical New Yorkers can be, to actually getting along and wishing each other well in literally a minute or two? Well, what I used there were 3 little words. And the words are interests, facts, options. The turning point was firstly when I asked him, "Why won't you take me to Manhattan?"
Those are interests.
I was looking to learn his interests. And that's a critical turning point. Usually when we're mad at people, or they're mad at us, it's because we're locked into a single position. Take me to Manhattan. No, yes, no. That's a position. And many arguments founder on just that. When I asked him why, he shared with me the reason. He told me his concern. He wants to get home, which is actually a pretty good reason. So my interest was I needed to go meet with a loved one in Manhattan soon and avoid the rain. All right, so now I start gathering facts. And one key fact was that, there's another taxi that's available. And that gave me an idea. It gave me an option. Instead of making him go to Manhattan, what if we got me there by another means? And I needed his help to get to that point. And that was immediately good for him. I can get rid of you in a minute? Sure, I'm happy to help you. And it solved his problem, it solved my problem, and we were both harmonious. Now that might seem like a small, even slightly trivial example, but I've seen people use the three little words to do everything from resolve an existential crisis that was facing a company where in 20 minutes the company was about to go out of business because a client was demanding something impossible, to saving $100 million in the course of a year, to saving a family that was collapsing in the wake of a death.
Well, I'm interested in this example, the corporation that was 20 minutes away from collapsing.
Sure.
Tell me how that situation worked. And that these three words.
Mm-hmm. Interest, facts, options. That's right.
How did that work?
So you're sitting at your desk one day and you get a call from Brenda, who represents your company's biggest client. And she says, how's the project going? And you say, it's going great. We're on schedule to have it for you, as we promised, in 60 days. And she says, yeah, that's what I'm calling about. We need it in 30. And you almost fall out of your chair and you say, Brenda, I really don't think that's going to happen. And she says, well, would you please check, because it would mean a lot to us. So you do, and your team laughs you out of the room, and you say, Brenda, I just checked with them, there's no way. She's not happy, but she concludes the call. You go back to work, and 10 minutes later, your boss, Dave, calls you and says, get in here. So what do? So you go talk to Dave, and Dave is on the phone with Brenda's boss, Betty, and Betty is really angry. And she's saying, if you don't get us this project done and in our hands in 30 days, you're going to lose us. Oh my God, what do we do? And so you very wisely tell your boss, tell her you'll call her back. And you say, can we call you back? And she says, yes, but I'm going into a meeting in 20 minutes with my bosses. I need to hear from you. Get everyone in here, says Dave, as the call ends. And so everyone convenes. And what do you do now? Everyone on the team says, it's impossible. And Dave tells you, we've got to do this. Can't, got to, can't, got to. That is exactly the same problem I face with the taxi driver. We were each taking positions, and so are the people in your story now. The tech team's position is no. The boss's position is yes. What would you do in that situation? Well, I had a student, Janice, who faced that very problem. And she deployed the three little words. She first asked the team, why can't we? And they immediately fire-hosed her with dozens of technical reasons. Okay, she says. Why do you suppose the client needs this in 30 days? We don't know. And suddenly things shift to quiet, and everyone's going, huh. And they start thinking and talking, and they put the puzzle pieces together, and they discover, they have a pilot project that they want to debut as a showcase, and they need our work to make that project, that pilot project, a success. Well, says Janice, as she's now gathered facts and interests, she says, are there any things we can do to help them successfully launch this project, this pilot, in 30 days, even if our project isn't fully ready yet? And they start coming up with some ideas. They come up with three, time's up, got to call back. They call Betty back, and they say, and Dave and Janice ask her, just before we tell you what we think we've got, why do you want this in 30 days? And it's just as they'd guessed. The pilot they want to launch in 30 days. Well, says Dave, with Janice's coaching, I got to tell you, if you really want the project in 30 days, no one can do it. It's technically impossible. But if you want to launch the pilot in 30 days, we can help, because one thing we can do is manually perform the functions that our project will automate. We can do that from behind in the other room until it's ready to take over. Would that work for you? And Betty says, you would do that for us? Yes, we'll lend you 2 volunteers. They can easily do it for you. Just tell us when and where. You guys are amazing, fantastic. You guys are rock stars. We're gonna give you lots more business. And Janice was a hero. And she used the same 3 little words: interests, facts, options.
Now I wonder, after you get a success like that, how does that make you a better person? I mean, it might make you a more successful person. It might give you emotional high. But how does that make everybody involved better people? That is, to go back to our Sunday question, is how does the soul improve in that situation?
Well, one of the things that I most love about this work is that it enables you to be hard on the problem, soft on the person. Hard on the problem, soft on the person. That's a foundational idea, that you don't need to see the other person as the problem, but instead you can actually care for them, build, even strengthen the relationship, even as you deal with what's of deep concern to yourself. And so what you're doing is you're turning opposition into a harmonious collaboration. It doesn't always work, there are limitations, but it really improves your batting average. And what it most enables you to do as a result is to combine seemingly contradictory qualities. It allows you to be strong and kind. And one of the many things that I love about God is that God himself embodies the qualities of strength and kindness. And the people we most admire in this world are people who almost preternaturally combine the qualities of strength and kindness. And that includes people like Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Abraham Lincoln. They bring forth these qualities in ways that make you go, oh, I could never be like that. And yet you absolutely can. You may not be saving a great nation, but you definitely can integrate this into your daily life, and it's essentially the same thing.
Now, when you started doing this, when did you start doing this as a person, as a child, or after college, or when did this start?
Well, as I often say, I used to practice corporate law, and now I enjoy my life. And I was a very unhappy corporate lawyer here in New York City, and very gradually I found myself exploring first the idea of teaching, and I started teaching law, and then I got interested in mediation, and from that I got interested in negotiation. And essentially, these are all related to the idea of conflict management, peacemaking. There are all kinds of terms for it, but essentially it's about how do we get along with each other. And as I started to explore that question, I got more and more passionate, and I started teaching a course on this. And next year, 2024, will mark the 30th anniversary of my teaching this for the first time.
Wow, have you discovered that when you started doing this and discovering principles, or really the tools that you call them tools, mm-hmm. Did you see over time that you became a better person? Could you say, well, I remember Seth, you say it's been 30 years?
Yeah.
Seth, 30 years ago, I not only was, maybe more immature or younger or whatever, but, actually going through this process, I become a better person. Have you seen that, or is it more subtle than that?
I'm reluctant to comment on my own character. I'd have to leave it to others mostly. I think my wife would probably say that she's often asked, does he use this stuff on you? And the expectations, they hear the word negotiate and they assume that means, sharp tactics, aggressive, get over it. And she says, he uses it all the time, and I'm so glad he does, because that's not what I do, and it's not what I teach my students to do. I don't teach them to be sharp or aggressive, nor do I teach them to be weak. I teach them to integrate these qualities. And what my wife finds is that this really enriches our relationship. And I find it allows me to work with others, almost anyone, in a harmonious way. And so I'm less afraid of people getting mad or angry or frustrated because I know that I have tools that can enable me to turn impasse into harmony.
Oh, that leads me to another thought that you talk about. It helps to manage your emotions.
Yes.
That's sometimes the hardest we have when we know we're getting ready to go into a conflict. It can be, we know that we're headed for trouble. And the anxiety is high, and sometimes the alternating anger and despair is high too.
Mm-hmm.
How that seems to be an important part of dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Those things, those emotions seem to be an important part of negotiation, and also becoming a person that you can be happy about yourself. How do you do that?
Well, that may very well be the single most frequent question I ever get. What do I do with my emotions? And the short answer is that there isn't one short answer, but there are things that can definitely help you. And rather than just recite the whole book, I'll give you just one example that can really help.
Let me just remind the audience, we will have a link to the book. It's just brand new. It's just this year it came out.
Just a month and a half ago.
15 Tools to Turn the Tide, a step-by-step playbook for empowered negotiating. But to be empowered, you got to control your emotions because they undermine you. You were going to tell us about how.
Well, they can, but I don't think we need to be afraid of our emotions, even though the experience can be intense. One thing, so let's look at the people who are dealing with others who are way crazier and more scary than anyone you and I will ever likely have to deal with. And that's New York Police Department hostage negotiators. They have to deal with people who've got guns pointed at the head of 10-year-old boys.
Yeah.
And for decades, if not centuries, it was understood you can't negotiate with somebody like that, except the NYPD hostage negotiation team since the early 70s has shown you can, and they've done it so brilliantly that they've become a model. They were the first. They become a model for dozens, if not hundreds, of similar programs around the country and even as far away as Singapore.
That's right.
And you go, how in the world do you do that? Well, the secret of their success starts with the motto on their badge. And the motto is 3 words, talk to me. Talk to me. Their secret weapon is incredibly skilled listening. Listening, and not just nodding the head, but a certain kind of listening or suite of listening skills can enable you to actually mediate or to de-escalate a conflict, even where in literally seconds someone could die, and end it peacefully. So if it can work for them, it might be able to work for us.
Well, how do they control them? How do you say that you can control your emotions in those situations? Like that your what do you do beforehand, or do you do anything beforehand?
Well, yes. One of the key, if you ask a great musician like Jimi Hendrix or John Coltrane, how do you improvise so brilliantly? They'll say, well, I practice 10 or 12 hours a day. So there is a connection between preparation and emotional control. So if your experience of dealing with conflict and negotiation is that you're constantly gobsmacked and freaked out and afraid and cowering, one of the things that we can talk about in a moment is preparation. And there are specific things that one can do to improve dramatically. But let's say you find yourself in the moment, you can't get out of it, and you've got no idea what to do, you haven't prepared. One of the best ways to cope emotionally is to say back what the other one is saying. I was in this situation once myself. Many years ago, a senior figure in my organization came to me out of the blue and started saying things to me that essentially sounded like my career was about to go away. It turned out it all worked out fine, but in the moment, it was terrifying. And I was like a deer in the headlights. I didn't know what to do. But I knew from my training that if I could just listen, that would do a lot of good things. First of all, I'm not saying the wrong thing. Second, I'm showing respect. Third, I'm de-escalating. And fourth, I'm getting my head back into the game. And fifth, it tends to calm the other one down. And it also is a way of building trust and confidence. And it's costless. It doesn't require you to do or say anything except give your full attention. But merely nodding and listening isn't sufficient. There's something else that really is critical. And that, it turns out, I've crystallized into a tool in the book. It's called the Exactly Challenge.
The what?
The Exactly Challenge.
The Exactly Challenge?
Exactly.
Okay, tell us what that means. Exactly.
And I'm going to invite everyone who's listening to try this. The next time you're in a conflict, a difficult conversation, disagreement, you call it what you like. See what happens if 3 times during the conversation you say back what the other one is saying. Paraphrase if you wish, that's fine. So well that the other one says, exactly, or something like that. Don't do it like a parrot or a robot or Siri. But every now and then you say, I want to just make sure I'm understanding you. Is this what you're saying? Is this the basic idea? And you say it back in your own words. And if the other one says, yeah, exactly, see what happens. And let me show you what can happen. This is one of my favorite stories about this. There was a young woman who volunteered to work one night at a homeless shelter. True story. She's about 4'9", about 100 pounds. And the deal is that she is to be the sole person in the homeless shelter. She's to watch the residents as they sleep in bunks in front of her. She's the keeper of the bathroom and the front door key. Everyone who's there has to sign in. She's all alone, 2:30 in the morning. One of the residents comes to her. He's 6'10", 300 pounds, and he goes, give me the bathroom key. And she says, certainly, sir. Have you signed in? No. She says, well, sir, if you'll just sign in, I'll be happy to give you the bathroom key. He says, I'm not signing the blank, blank, blank in book.
Exactly.
No, not yet. So she says, well, sir, if you don't sign in, I can't give you the bathroom key. In fact, I can't even allow you to be here, so won't you please sign in? To which he replies, listen, blank, if you don't give me those blank, blank, blank and keys, I'm going to punch your blank, blank, blank and lights out. And she later wrote that she realized at that moment that if she didn't show that she understood exactly what he was saying to her, he would show her. So no kidding, she says, I get it. You're saying that if I don't give you these blank, blank, blank and keys, you're going to punch my blank, blank, blank and lights out. Am I getting it? And he goes,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this goes back and forth for several minutes. She keeps doing this and he keeps going, yeah, exactly. And then she says, sir, would you please leave? And he did. Now, I'm not saying that tonight, if you're at an ATM machine and you hear a voice behind you, you should turn around and say, so you're saying if I don't give you my money, you're going to shoot me. I'm not telling you to do that. But what she dramatized was exactly what hostage negotiators will tell you they do. And that is listen so well that it de-escalates the situation.
Now, in that situation, she comes out of that. And what did he come out of with that? What did he come out of that with?
He came out validated. He came out understood. And when people are angry, one of the first things they most want is not your agreement. They want your validation. They want to know that you're taking them seriously, that you're giving them their full attention, your full attention. And when you use a simple method like this, you're giving it to them. And that is like manna from heaven.
Now, I'm wondering, you mentioned a lot of ways that there's reconciliation. In here you invoke manna from heaven on one side.
Yeah.
And you have a phrase that you'd like to say, to win warmly.
Yes.
And all of these are very almost philosophical, maybe even theological. So I'm wondering, how does all of this that we're talking about, how does that come out of your faith life? Or is there any resources in your faith life that sort of mixes into this professional approach?
I think the simplest way to answer that is to say not at all and completely. You can enter into this work with no religious background or training or sense at all and still teach this, and it will work beautifully. And I never, ever, ever talk explicitly about my faith to my students. And I like to hope that everything I'm doing is informed in my heart by my longing to help bring forth the peaceable kingdom, the beloved community, to bring forth into the world more of these glimpses of what it is to be strong and kind, to bring forth shalom, which is really the full flowering of human potential, where harmony and justice and understanding and compassion are all wed together.
Well, I wonder if you when you do your read the Bible, do you find negotiation there, that they give tips for negotiation in the Bible?
I don't think, well, there certainly are fun stories and incidents where there is somebody who's haggling with somebody, but for me, the whole warp and woof of the scriptures, especially in the New Testament, I see as deeply informing what we're talking about here. The idea of each of us should not care just for our own interest, but also for the interest of others.
I've got so many questions, but we're going to have to wind up.
Okay.
We're going to give you your last word. What's your last word to our audience today?
Last word. How long do I have?
You got about 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Whether you are trying to work at a small problem with a clerk in a drugstore, or save an organization or a family that's breaking up over a heartbreaking death in the family and everyone is ready to kill each other, the tools that we're talking about, some of them very simple, some of them more sophisticated, can be an agent for transformation, for healing, for reconciliation, for taking a sad song and making it better.
Well, thank you for being with us, Seth. Next time I will have to ask you what to do about Thanksgiving dinners. Thank you, audience. My name is Tony Carnes. Thank you for being with us. This has been a journey through NYC Religions Television.